Unforgiveness is being trapped in hate and not really knowing it. Knowing it, not being really conscious of it. You know, I was just going down memory lane a few minutes ago, and I was looking at some of my very first notes when I really started digging into what forgiveness and reconciliation is. And this was my very first notes 3 years ago that I'd put together of what forgiveness is. It's right at 86 definitions of what forgiveness is, what it is or what it does, you know. Just trying to make it worth it. Trying to make it worth it. Because none of us go after anything we don't think is worth it. Or if we don't think it might be worth it. Anyways, this one particular item, without going into the specifics, but yet being specific, I hadn't had an item to where it's like the more I worked on it, the more the hate came alive, the more the revenge came alive, and the more I understood the psychological aspects of it and the damage it caused on me, and the more I could see it and how I could see how it echoed through the years. Anyways, yeah, it literally took a little over 2 years to get it straightened out. And even now, it's not perfect. But it's not nothing to mess with anymore either. I know there is probably never going to be any reconciliation to it. Forgiveness, yeah, that's where you just move on. Anyways, I was looking at this and just really thinking about forgiveness and stuff like that. And if a person does have some serious unforgiveness going on, it takes work. It takes work. It could take months. It could take a few years to get it right, to get it fixed, so to speak. And in my case, I had to basically give myself around 200, 300, 400 pieces, articles of why it's worth it to me on my behalf to get to let go. But you know what? After a couple of years going through these papers and stuff like that, and just looking at them every single day for a little over 2 years, and I mean like literally every single day. Every single day. Yeah, these notes, they got all these colors and lines and everything, just really dissecting it. And after a couple of years of doing these things and looking at it this way, looking at it that way, like this one here, this is 101 reasons of forgiveness, or 101 definitions of what forgiveness can be, or what it does, or the benefits of it. Here's another set of them. There's like 101 in these. So that's almost 300 just right there And a lot of them are kind of like the same thing, just worded a different way. But you know what? There's so many things in life where we don't get it, we don't get it, we don't get it. It's like 1,000 people can tell us the same thing, and then it gets worded a certain way with just a handful of words at the right time, at the right place, from the right person, or the right thing, with the right situations, on the right day. And bam, it just like opens a lock. That's why stuff like this is so important, to me anyway. You know, I have literally actually grown fond of these notes. I mean, because they're me. They're me. They don't mean what they meant back then. Here's some more of the very beginning of it, of what forgiveness is. The 3 kinds of forgiveness, 3 levels of it. But anyways, the guy that wrote that one book, Start With Why. I think that thing right there can be used in so many different ways. I don't care if it's your goals, your dreams, family things, whatever. If you get enough reasons of why, just start hacking them out and just start adding them up, 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 adding them up. Next thing you know, you got so many reasons why, and then finally, click, the brain clicks over. To me, this is what I finally figured out about the insanity of unforgiveness. Because that's what it is. It's insanity. Straight up, it is. Here's what, after 3 years, a little under 3 years, we'll call it a little under 3 years because that's technically what it is. This is what I came to when I finally came to the end of it. Forgiveness is letting go of any wanting to change what happened. Forgiveness is letting go of any need to change what happened. Forgiveness is letting go of any want and or need to get it made right somehow. Forgiveness is considering what happened as happened and accepting it as such, that it did happen to me. An acceptance that it did in fact happen. See, that right there, it was the, it's almost like a, what I would say it is. It's like a refusal to accept a betrayal as such and holds rigidly, resentfully, and even hatefully for it to be fixed so that it doesn't have to be accepted as such. When they just will not believe it actually happened to them. See, that's what I came to. That's the conclusion I came to after over 2 years of studying that forgiveness and the reconciliation every day for almost 3 years. That's what it came to. I realized the fact once I finally got my emotions and my mind to grapple with it, to get it subdued to the point where I realized that's what it was for me. It may be different from other people, but for me, that's what it was. It was just the fact that I just could not let it go as such. As that, I could not let it go as it is what it is. Because it's almost like there's some kind of craziness that if you just hang on to it with enough hate or enough anger or disgust or whatever, if you just hold on to enough of that, then you never have to accept it as such, and maybe some magical force will fix it and reconcile it for you so you don't have to accept it as such. That's the insanity of unforgiveness. Straight up insanity. Forgiveness requires work. Psychological work, emotional work, pen and paper work. It requires the sacrifice of time, focus, deliberate focus. And that's probably why so many of us run around with low quality relationships. And a lot of us are caught up in the just, here's what I was caught up in so much of. Before I got into all this, I was caught up in the fact that somehow I got caught up in this loop. If I just made enough money, became successful enough, if I own this or own that, accomplish this, accomplish that, then I would be happy. Then I would be fulfilled. And then life would be great. You know what? At this point, I look back at the plans I made in 2017, and I'm glad those goals that I'd set did not work out in the way that I expected them to and wanted them to. Because you know what? I honestly believe I would have gone from being a bad person to a worse person, to a terrible person, to a pathetic person, if I would have reached those goals and had that kind of money in my possession. And I know this in small ways. I've never had millions per se, but I can remember times in my life to where I should have been happy. I should have been content. I should have been proud. Still wasn't there. And then when it was there, it was just a puffed up ego that was arrogant, prideful, definitely an unloving creature or an unlovable creature. Sometimes it's a long day in school on a subject. It really is. The reconciliation. The reconciliation. So, from what I see, after all this, once the dust has settled, I realized it was more of me hating me for failing me. Or maybe even if it wasn't more so, it was definitely a good portion, a serious element to the whole thing. So at this point, I honestly believe, there's plenty of people out there you don't have to reconcile with. See, that's something I did not know. It's so important to know what reconciliation and forgiveness is. See, as forgiving ourselves, we have to reconcile ourselves with ourselves. It's a must. We have to forgive ourselves into a degree to where it can be moved into self-reconciliation. Because if we don't, it becomes toxic. But somehow there is a little loophole where we can forgive others to a certain degree, and we can cut them loose. We don't have to reconcile. See, reconciliation means when you repair a relationship and bring them back into your life or whatever, allow them back into your life. But even so, if you're talking betrayal or anything in that direction, I just use the word betrayal because if it comes to unforgiveness, you were betrayed. Period. You can put it at level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, whatever, however category 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 of betrayal. And yeah, you don't have to reconcile with them. And don't let anybody tell you that you have to. Because you don't. But I honestly believe every one of us has a responsibility to reconcile ourselves with ourselves, to make it right with ourselves on our behalf. Otherwise, we're just not whole. Think about this. Would it be insane for us to be running around deep down wanting like some kind of intrinsic trust or an unwavering trust from our loved ones, but yet we don't even have that unwavering trust for ourselves? Well, we can't even trust ourselves. I mean, how could we possibly even want that from another human being if we couldn't even do it for ourselves? So self-reconciliation, to be reconciled with oneself, to make it right with oneself, to make it up to yourself. That. And you know what? I think we do it all the time in certain ways. We just don't give ourselves credit for it and acknowledge it. Guess what? If you don't give yourself credit for it and then acknowledge it for what it truly is, can it still have the same effect? I mean, like, let's say if we was like in a relationship and we were there all the time with them, but we weren't acknowledging these things, would that relationship be okay? Would that relationship be healthy? Would it be growing and developing? Would it be toxic? It'd be straight up toxic. That's what happens too much. So the CTA for today is to ask yourself, do I have a toxic relationship with myself? And if so, how many toxic relationships am I allowing in my life because I don't know the difference between toxic and healthy or okay or normal? Because it's easy to get around a bunch of other people that are doing the same or very similar, and guess what? Things don't bloom. Things don't grow. You know, there's an old saying. They say if the flower is sickly, if there's something wrong with the plant, there's something wrong with the flower. You don't fix the flower. You adjust its environment. You adjust the pot it's in. You adjust its soil. You adjust its nutrients. You adjust the environment. And, you know, that's what these kind of things are. Adjusting the environment of the mind, and what I'm seeing. That's what I believe forgiveness is, of self. Anyways, the question. Is the relationship that I have with myself, to myself, for me, is it toxic or not? And also, in what areas? And if so, what is it specifically? Have a good one. See you in the funny pages. It's past 15 minutes.